West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire.
I don't understand what.
Are you thinking of potentially trying to use campaign money to pay some of those penalties that you went for?
What penalties?
In the New York fraud case, the defamation case.
I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, that's been proven as far as I'm concerned. And actually, we won in the Court of Appeals. You probably saw that. That case has been largely won in the Court of Appeals. That was a political case coordinated with the White House by the Attorney General, I assume is what you're talking about. And we won that case largely in the Court of Appeals. That's a ridiculous case. That case is.
That was Donald Trump at a press conference earlier. And yes, you heard that right. A reporter was asking Donald Trump, so are you thinking about using campaign funds to pay for some of the penalties, the verdicts that are being entered against you? For example, the $83.3 million defamation verdict that was just determined by a jury in the federal case brought against you by E. Jean Carroll. Donald Trump's response was, what penalties? And so the reporter said, for example, the $83.3 million verdict against you in the case where you defamed the woman you raped. The reporter didn't use that language, but let's be clear about what that verdict is for. But you heard what the reporter said. And then Donald Trump's response was, I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, that's been proven as far as I'm concerned. And then he acted like he won the case and said, we've already been determined that we won, and we won the New York Attorney General case in the Court of Appeals. I mean, folks, everything he says is a lie. And you clearly see this really disturbing cognitive decline before our eyes. And, here's how he's spending his time now. He's either at Mar-a-Lago, or Bedminster, wherever, signing t-shirts of himself, mugshot photos of himself, and showing it to people that he's signing his mugshot. He's out there when he's giving these traveling fascist circus events that he calls rallies. He's on stage making noises. The way he's describing our military in his speeches is through sounds, ding, 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 whoosh, whoosh, ding, ding, whoosh. This is some really bizarre stuff here. This is him in a recent appearance in New Hampshire. Play this clip.
These are not muscle guys here. They're muscle guys up here, right? And they calmly walk to a seat. Ding, 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 ding. They've only got 17 seconds to figure this whole thing out, right? Boom. Okay. Missile launch. Pshin, boom. It's the most
Going back to that press conference that I showed at the outset of this video where Donald Trump claims that there are no penalties, that he's won the New York Attorney General case, and he doesn't know what the reporter is talking about. This is from the same press conference that he held. Here, play this clip and notice the part where he says, for the people that do that, and how he just really struggles just to get out the sentence even. But play this clip.
We were working so hard on human trafficking. You know, it's a horrible thing. You think of it as sort of an ancient crime. It's not ancient because of the internet. It's a tremendous money for the people that do it, a tremendous moneymaker. None of that, you would have had none of that.
And when he goes that people think about trafficking as something that's ancient, but people don't think of it as something that takes place right now, what are you talking about? We know what a serious problem it is right now. And also, Donald Trump said this in 2002 to New York Magazine, that Jeffrey Epstein is, quote, a terrific guy. This is a direct quote from Donald Trump. In 2002, after partying with Jeffrey Epstein throughout the 1990s, quote, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them are on the younger side. It's who Donald Trump is. And by the way, what the jury saw in these depositions of Donald Trump, let's just take the E. Jean Carroll case, for example, is so deeply disturbing. Here, let me just show you this portion. This is what the jury got to see in the E. Jean Carroll case, where Donald Trump was found to have engaged in sexual assault and defamation. The jury saw this evidence, for example, this deposition, where Donald Trump is discussing the Access Hollywood tape, where he brags on tape about sexually assaulting women on tape. And then when he's asked about it in his deposition in the E. Jean Carroll case, when Roberta Kaplan is questioning him, Trump says that fortunately, he goes, unfortunately or fortunately, this is something that rich men can do and famous people can do. And then he's asked, are you famous? And then he goes, yeah, here, play this clip.
And you say, and again, this has become very famous in this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the pussy?
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
And
here's another portion from that same deposition, again, where the jury ultimately rendered a verdict of $83.3 million against Donald Trump, $65 million in punitive damages, $18.3 million in compensatory damages. One of Donald Trump and Alina Habba's defenses, one was that Donald Trump gave E. Jean Carroll what she wanted. When Donald Trump sexually assaulted her and defamed her, E. Jean Carroll wanted fame. Trump delivered her the fame that E. Jean Carroll wanted, so E. Jean Carroll's not damaged because Trump made her a star. That was one of the defenses that was put on. The other is that E. Jean Carroll was not Donald Trump's type, so therefore he couldn't engage in the sexual assault because she was not his type. That's one of the things that was argued to the juries by Donald Trump's lawyer. So Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, showed a photo to Donald Trump of E. Jean Carroll when they had met, and Donald Trump thought it was his wife, Marla Maples. So Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, then goes to Donald Trump, was Marla Maples and your wives, are they your type? And then Trump said yes, but watch how confused he is as he's being shown the photographs of E. Jean Carroll, who he thinks is Marla Maples, even though in this photo, Donald Trump's with Ivana in the photo, who, by the way, is now buried in Bedminster in an area where the Daily Mail did an expose showing that Trump just let the grass grow over this really sadistic kind of grave site, this ghoulish grave site that he built. But here's what Donald Trump said in the deposition. Play this clip.
I don't even know who the woman. Let's see. I don't know who. It's Marla.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla. Yeah, that's my wife.
Which woman are you pointing to? No.
Here. Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was
I
E.
see.
Jean Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
And the woman on the right is your then wife.
I don't know.
Ivana?
This was the picture. I assume that's John Johnson. Is that?
That's Carol.
Because it's very blurry.
And so it's now being reported, of course, that Donald Trump's political action committees for his campaign have spent at least $50 million. $50 million in legal expenses in just 2023 for Donald Trump. So that's why at the outset, Donald Trump was being asked, so are you going to use your campaign funds to pay off these verdicts? And you heard Donald Trump's response there. You heard his other response when he was talking about other topics. And this is just some really bizarre and disturbing stuff. And by the way, this comes at the same time. Here's what Donald Trump posted on his social media platform. I am in the process, along with my team, of interviewing various law firms to represent me in an appeal of one of the most ridiculous and unfair witch hunts our country has ever seen. The defamation sham presided over by a Clinton-appointed, highly partisan, Trump-hating judge, Lewis Kaplan, who was, together with certain other radical left Democrat judges, one of the most partisan and out-of-control activists I have ever appeared before. He was a bully, and he puts that in quotes, who demanded 2 trials rather than 1, denied me due process, would not allow me to put forth vital evidence. Everything Trump's saying there is absolutely false. Trump fled the United States in the first trial. He went to Scotland and Ireland, and he held a shovel and pretended that he was building something when he was just too afraid to show up. Donald Trump didn't turn over his DNA on time. Donald Trump and his lawyers did not disclose experts on time. They blew almost every deadline. It was horrible lawyering. And 2 separate juries saw this case and determined, number 1, the first case, that Trump sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll. He defamed her. And then another jury found that as well, and found that Donald Trump acted maliciously and awarded massive punitive damages. This behavior is so odd, it's so off, it's so dangerous.
It is Thursday, the 1st of February of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Yes, yummy. Well, boy, Trump is losing it, is he not? Of course, this guy lies. Like you and I drink water, and we can do it with one hand. He has to use 2. But nonetheless, he's using 2 hands to lie there about winning his cases, and there were no penalties. His followers are going to believe that. And in spite of the fact there's a court record, a public document, all that is fake. Because the great God Trump says that it came out a different way. I was watching one of those history channels, not the history, maybe it was, I don't know, but it was one of the history channels that usually is skewed towards the pro-military, more conservative audience. And they were going over the history of Hitler's rise in Germany and how he became, the dictator that he became, that we all know. And I got to tell you, Donald Trump and his handlers are following the Nazi playbook. Even to, pushing this meme that Trump was put on earth by God to do great things for us. Exact words. and just any number of strategies that are exactly the same as the Nazis. Okay. I just saying, when we call Stephen Miller, some people call him Discount Goebbels. That's good. I like that. But I like Santa Monica Goebbels, because that's what he was known in high school, at Santa Monica High School, because he wanted to get rid of the Hispanic janitor who came to this country to poison the blood of Americans, white Americans. And it got so bad that Stephen Miller's rabbi essentially excommunicated him. There's not really an excommunication in the Jewish religion, but he essentially kicked him out of the synagogue. So get out. So that says everything right there in terms of Santa Monica Discount Goebbels. And we got to put up with it. I can't say punch the Nazis anymore on Twitter because that is considered hate, violent speech. But go ahead and, hold your dad's decapitated head up in a plastic bag and rant about the Biden regime and how federal employees like his dad need to be cut off at the head. That stayed up on YouTube forever and a day. Posted on Twitter. Did anybody say sorry about that at the Let's Protect the Kiddies trial of the social media giants? I have to say that hearing reminded me so much of the Tipper Gore, we got to get these lyrics that are hurting our kids out of the public discourse. And there's some great comebacks. Frank Zappa gave quite a impassioned testimony, a very learned and impassioned testimony. He was able to go toe-to-toe. Not necessarily with Tipper, but there were some other idiots there that, kind of put in their place. And we liked it. So it was a bit odd. And there is the argument that as unfortunate as these kids' deaths or whatever, in the grand scheme of things of how much traffic goes through there, it's like such a minuscule amount it hardly even registers, except it registers to the families whose kids were lost to fentanyl or, sex trafficking or whatever it is that they lost their kids for, suicide. So, there's a lot of factors going on in kids' movement towards self-destruction. And I got to say, they used to talk about newspapers doing that back in the day. Radio's going to destroy our kids. I guess it did. See what happened? I wouldn't be surprised if the Sears Roebuck catalog would have been considered pornography in various parts of the country. We can't have those night dresses in the hands of our kids. What if they saw those night dresses on sale? Oh my God. Bustiers too. Bustles. You can't show a woman's bustle. It'll cause a kid to go get damaged. Well, yeah, no kidding. When you realize what they're doing to a woman's body to get her in the bustle. Yeah, that'll damage you if you have any sense. So, I'm just saying, I'm not a big fan of Zuckerberg or any of them, but it did remind me of we got to get the bad lyrics out of rock and roll music. Dancing. Rock and roll dancing. That was going to, destroy the kids. And I guess it did. Look what the hell happened. Okay, enough of that. What do we have in store for you? in the rest of the this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we begin here in the Bistro Cafe. Well, the newest member of the Oregon House of Representatives is a frothing MAGA who claims supporting drag queens and LGBTQ plus was akin to supporting child abuse and pedophilia, and he is getting it, as well he should. He's like an idiot in Grants Pass. What's up with that? You know, they're the city that says, you know, took a case to the Supreme Court that, you know, letting people have a blanket in freezing weather is a crime. And the Supreme Court's got to decide whether giving a blanket to a homeless person in the snow is a crime. Thanks. Let's see. 25 California counties have sued electric car manufacturer Tesla for mishandling hazardous waste at more than 100 facilities throughout the state. And a small venture capital firm faced tough questions about DEI from a tribunal of conservative federal judges in Florida as it defended a grant program for black women-owned businesses. A bunch of white guys are whining that they're being discriminated against because black women are getting this venture capital. F you. Excuse me. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Germany's domestic intelligence agency has put its own Mike Flynn, who was removed as the agency's head several years ago, under scrutiny for his neo-Nazi advocacy. And the only complaint about this scrutiny is that it's not really neo. It's Nazi advocacy. And Hungary defended its treatment of an Italian anti-fascist activist after images of her chained and shackled at a Budapest court hearing sparked official protests by the far-right Italian government. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, and for everything else that you do. Across the page to the left from that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills and fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance that's been resisting for so many years because of your generosity. Now, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, well, you're helping us pay those bills and fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance. So thank you for your generosity to those of you who have been doing so for so many, many, many years. And also thank you to those of you who are considering doing so possibly in the near future. Because I got to tell you, the bills keep coming and they keep going up. And we thank you for, helping us fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many, many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Facebook, etc., you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those, and we all take care of Facebook. Yeah, we do. And thanks, Tom, for all of that and everything else that you are doing here as well. Thank you so much. Follow me on all those social media platforms as well, and including Tumblr and Instagram. Yeah, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And then you can find me on social media at Justice Putnam. And then you'll have quick access to the links and show notes. And you can do so by following those social media feeds, because the links are right there, and it'll take you to the Daily Co's diaries, in which you can find the show that you would like to, read the articles from the actual reporters. Oh, my gosh. Let's see. Oh, you can follow the show on Twitter. It's just a placeholder. I apologize. And it's a new year, already into the second month. So I'm going to promise that I'll get some other social media feeds other than just Twitter. But you can find the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please, most importantly, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Even on Audible. You can find us on Audible now. There we are. Okay, just not on Stitcher. And you know why. Do you? Well, can't get them anymore, because the powers that be. Oh, my. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It is from the Oregon Public Broadcasting website by Julia Shumway from the Oregon Capitol Chronicle. The newest member of the Oregon House of Representatives claimed supporting LGBTQ plus people was akin to supporting child abuse, and accused drag queens of pedophilia in months-old posts on his campaign website. Dwayne Yunker, a real estate broker, I'm not buying a house from that bigot, and a city councilor from Grants Pass, sundown town, up until the mid-'70s, which means that it was a sundown town for a lot longer. Well, he was appointed in December to finish the term of former Representative Lily Morgan, who resigned to become the city manager of Gold Hill, which is just south of us a little bit. Yunker was already planning to challenge Morgan in the Republican primary, arguing she was not conservative enough for the Southern Oregon district. Yeah, we live in sundown town, Southern Oregon. Yunker's campaign website includes a post from last August titled "No to Gay Pride Month," explaining his decision to skip the beginning of a Grants Pass City Council meeting to protest a proclamation about June as Pride Month. He was a member of the council at the time. The transgender community college student who accepted the proclamation said it was a step toward making Grants Pass a community where young LGBTQ plus people want to stay and raise families instead of feeling they need to escape. Well, of course, he wants them to escape because he's a bigot. But the public comment portion of that meeting began with opposition to the proclamation, and Mayor Sarah Bristol faced an unsuccessful recall vote for not representing, this is the quote, the conservative principles of the majority of her constituents. You have to be a bigot because we say so. Yunker's campaign post included claims that drag queens are pedophiles, and events including family-friendly drag shows or drag queen story hours or attempts to make pedophilia seem acceptable. Has he ever been to one of his churches? I got to tell you, even around here, there's churches, youth ministers, and ministers getting busted for pedophilia. I have yet to find a drag queen who's been busted for that. It is shocking that any adult would endorse this child abuse, he wrote. Therefore, on June 7th, I did not attend the beginning of the Grants Pass City Council meeting. I will not be a part of or stand next to anyone who supports these abuses. He's a bigot. He expounded in his objections to Pride Month in a subsequent post titled, "Shouldn't Christians Avoid Politics?" In it, Yunker wrote that he considered a statement in the resolution that LGBTQ plus people face persecution to be spurious or false, as he's, well, discriminating against them in the moment. And he complained that LGBTQ plus people, who he referred to as the ever-expanding alphabet movement, were actually discriminating against Christians. We cannot sit afraid someone might call us right-wing, homophobic, or even Christian nationalists, he wrote. Yeah, don't be afraid of being called a Christian nationalist. They tell you what they are. They always do. Brett Bachman, the night editor at the Daily Beast, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Elon Musk's Tesla was sued by 25 California counties that allege the electric car manufacturer mishandled hazardous waste in a number of forms at more than 100 facilities throughout the state, the latest development in a years-long saga that included months of settlement talks which fell apart recently. The more than 24 district attorneys who banded together to file the lawsuit want an injunction filed against the company to force it to responsibly handle the industrial waste generated by its facilities, as well as steep penalties of up to $70,000 a day for any breaches in compliance. Materials like used lubricating oils, brake cleaners, used lead acid batteries and other batteries, used aerosols, used antifreeze, waste solvents and other cleaners, electronic waste, waste paint, and contaminated debris, and a number of other substances were all disposed of improperly, according to the lawsuit, which was originally filed in San Joaquin County Superior Court and first reported by Reuters. Tesla did not return comment to the outlet because who does? The counties also allege that Tesla transported the hazardous materials to landfills that were not authorized to take the substances in question. Rumblings of the conflict with the California counties first went public in 2022 when the company revealed in a Securities and Exchange Commission filing that it was subject of an investigation by several local DAs in the state. As recently as October of last year, the two sides said they were seeking a settlement out of court, though those talks appear to have broken down in recent weeks. Tesla has come under fire for its environmental practices before, including once in 2019, when it settled with the EPA after federal authorities found a plethora of violations at the company's Fremont, California factory, and another time in 2022, when it was fined for violating the long-standing Clean Air Act. Alexandra Olson and David Fisher of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A small venture capital firm faced tough questions from conservative judges yesterday, Wednesday, as it defended a grant program for black women-owned businesses in a lawsuit that has become emblematic of a growing legal backlash against corporate diversity programs. The Fearless Fund, which provides early-stage funding for businesses owned by women of color, is asking a 3-judge panel in a U.S. federal court of appeals to lift an injunction against one of its programs, the Strivers Grant Contest, which provides $20,000 to businesses that are majority-owned by black women. The conservative group American Alliance for Equal Rights filed a lawsuit last fall arguing that the program discriminates against people of other races, white men. The hearing in Miami is intended to decide whether the grant will remain suspended for the duration of the lawsuit. Questions by the conservative-leaning panel, consisting of 2 judges appointed by Donald Trump and 1 appointed by President Barack Obama, suggest the Fearless Fund will have an uphill battle. Judge Kevin Newsom, a Trump appointee, pushed back against the Fearless Fund's argument that the grants are protected by the First Amendment because they are charitable donations. He asked the Fearless Fund's attorneys whether the same protection would apply to a contest open to only white applicants. That's a question frequently raised by Edward Blum, a conservative activist who leads the American Alliance for Equal Rights and who was behind the Supreme Court case that ended affirmative action in college admissions. I think that's a pretty simple yes or no, Newsom said, interrupting when the attorney for the Fearless Fund, Jason Schwartz, started to reply. Schwartz replied that a white-only contest set up under the parameters would indeed be protected by the First Amendment, no matter how repugnant I might find that. The First Amendment protects all speech, Schwartz said. Pressed to explain how the case differs from a business that excludes minorities, Schwartz argued that charitable donations intended to promote a cause differ from commercial transactions such as employment and housing. The American Alliance has argued that the Fearless Fund's contest is not a charitable donation, but a contract whose racial requirements violate Section 1981 of the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race when enforcing contracts. It was originally intended to protect formerly enslaved people from economic exclusion, and now they are using it to keep the ancestors of formerly enslaved people excluded from any economic gain. The Fearless Fund case has become a rallying point for civil rights activists who argue that a ruling dismantling the program would endanger other donations or programs designed to help disadvantaged groups. The Fearless Fund was founded to address the huge racial disparity in funding for businesses owned by women of color. Less than 1% of venture capital funding, for example, goes to businesses owned by black and Hispanic women. So, the American Alliance wants to make sure that that number is 0. And that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to this edition of PCD Soundbites. I'm Karen Ngowe, filling in for your host, Latoya Simmons. Current guidelines recommend adults get at least 2.5 hours of moderate intensity aerobic activity a week, like brisk walking. But many Americans don't get enough physical activity to meet this guideline, which can lead to chronic disease and premature death. Joining me today is Dr. Susan Carlson, a lead epidemiologist in CDC's Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity. We'll be discussing her research, which aims to estimate the percentage of U.S. deaths attributed to inadequate levels of physical activity. Thank you for being here, Susan.
Thank you for inviting me, Karen.
Susan, give us a brief overview of your study.
As Karen stated, the current aerobic physical activity guideline recommends that adults participate weekly in at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, or its equivalent for substantial health benefits. The health benefits include such things as lowering the risk of premature death, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancers, and depression. In our study, we first examined what influence physical activity levels below the current guideline have on premature mortality, and we wanted to look at whether this association differed by age. The second purpose was really to estimate the percentage of deaths that are attributable to levels of physical activity that are inadequate to meet the current guideline.
What did your research reveal about the association between inadequate physical activity and premature death among American adults?
So in a nationally representative sample of U.S. adults, we found that adults with levels of physical activity inadequate to meet current guidelines had an increased risk of premature death. Overall, we found that 8.3% of deaths were attributed to inadequate levels of physical activity. Our findings suggest that if you increase adults' physical activity levels to meet the current guidelines, this is likely one way to reduce the risk of premature death in the United States.
What did you find when you looked at this association in different age groups?
We did not find a significant association between physical activity level and mortality in adults aged 25 to 39. However, for those aged 40 to 69 and 70 or older, we found that not meeting the guideline was associated with an increased risk of premature mortality.
How did these findings compare to previous similar studies?
We found that our estimates were similar or slightly lower when comparing to similar studies that have examined this association. In general, our estimates of the percent of deaths attributable to inadequate levels of physical activity is not practically different from other studies.
Do you think researchers have become better at estimating the percentage of deaths attributed to inadequate physical activity?
Estimating the percentage can be challenging. Many of the previous studies that have provided these estimates have done so by combining estimates across different sources. This can really bias results, especially if there are differences in the populations or if the physical activity measure differs. When you use a survival analysis conducted in a single population, which is what we did in this study, you can overcome a lot of these biases and improve your estimates. Facilitating the linking of CDC survey data from systems like the National Health Interview Survey to mortality data can really help researchers explore these issues.
How do you think this research can be used to help get adults moving and reduce the risk of premature death associated with inadequate physical activity?
So we found in this study that a significant portion of deaths were attributed to lower levels of physical activity. By estimating the public health burden of low levels of physical activity, this can be important for setting research and program priorities and for public health planning at the national, state, and local level. Ultimately, individuals make the decision to be active. However, this decision can be made easier by programs and policies that provide opportunities for physical activity and by making communities more activity-friendly. By working collaboratively across different sectors, communities across the nation can help to increase physical activity levels and potentially reduce the risk of premature death.
Thank you, Susan. You can read her study, Percentage of Deaths Associated with Inadequate Physical Activity in the United States, online at cdc.gov/PCD. The findings and conclusions in this report are those of the author and do not necessarily represent the official position of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com?
All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Pardon me. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In states across the country, the use or non-use of the pardon, an executive branch power that officially forgives a crime, is a total hodgepodge. In 16 states, pardons are frequently or regularly granted according to the Restoration of Rights Project, but in 13 states, they are rare indeed. Interestingly, the redness or blueness of a state is not necessarily determinative. For example, South Carolina grants hundreds of pardons each year, and so does Delaware, while supposedly progressive Massachusetts for decades has paid virtually no attention to the pardon power, although the present governor, Maura Healey, is changing that. Some example of states' renewed use of pardons? Missouri Governor Mike Parsons, a former sheriff, has pardoned over 600 people in 3 years. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers has granted 1,100 pardons, and recent Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf granted 2,500, many for marijuana-related offenses. Pardons can be a powerful tool for doing justice. Their renewed use is part of a national movement to restore rights and allow people to pursue their education and professions and employment and housing that will give people something we often say we believe in, a second chance. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In November 2023, an 8th Circuit Federal Court of Appeals upheld a lower court's radical ruling that Arkansas voters did not have the right to sue under the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Despite being widely panned as a fringe ruling, the 8th Circuit refused to rehear the case January 30th. The Arkansas State Conference of the NAACP and the Arkansas Public Policy Panel, represented by the ACLU, contested racially gerrymandered statehouse maps under the Voting Rights Act Section 2. In 2022, an 8th Circuit Federal District Court ignored decades of private right of action precedent allowing voters, civil rights groups, and democracy advocates to bring suit to protect the rights of voters. The court restricted standing only to the U.S. Department of Justice, though for the moment it applies only to states in the 8th Circuit: Arkansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota. The decision started a chain reaction in the 8th Circuit and other districts, with anti-voter state officials attempting to reopen VRA cases they'd lost, including in North Dakota and Louisiana. Other district courts refused those requests. Taking the case to the U.S. Supreme Court would likely be a gamble, given the willingness of the court's most conservative and radical justices to gut the Voting Rights Act. We have more on the case and the groups taking action at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That day marked a pivotal moment in the continuing Flint sit-down strike. The nationwide strike against GM started in Flint, Michigan in late December. By late January, UAW organizers agreed that nearby Chevy engine plant number 4 had to be shut down. It was a massive facility. It employed 4,000 workers on 2 shifts. The plant superintendent had been firing union activists. Armed guards patrolled every inch of the facility to prevent a sit-down. Union organizers knew there were company spies in their ranks. They planned the takeover by staging distracting job actions at nearby Chevy plants number 9 and then number 6. This would draw the guards away from plant number 4. And so, on this day, just as the day's shift was ending, workers sat down at Chevy plant number 9. the company guards were ready to launch an attack. They began beating and gassing the sit-downers. The Women's Emergency Brigade smashed plant windows to dissipate the gas. The diversion worked. Guards left Chevy number 4 unattended. Workers then turned off all the machines and barricaded themselves in. The plant guards tried to re-enter and were met with pistons, connector rods, and fire hoses. The Women's Emergency Brigade gathered outside the plant and locked arms. UAW organizer Joe Sayan announced, quote, "We want the whole world to understand what we are fighting for. We are fighting for freedom and life and liberty. This is our great opportunity. What if we should be defeated? What if we should be killed? We have only one life. That's all we can lose, and we might as well die like heroes than like slaves." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya. A little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs only in the mid-50s, generally cloudy with rain showers throughout the day, and it's lightly raining at the moment. Winds will be light and variable. Looks like we're going to get about a quarter inch of rain throughout the day. Rain showers tonight becoming a steady light rain by early morning. Lows in the low 40s. Winds will be light and variable. Looks like another quarter inch of rain overnight. Then cloudy with showers tomorrow. Highs only in the upper 40s. Winds light and variable. Looks like something less than a quarter inch of rain. Pollen is rated as none outside here in our little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 25 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is low at level 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.56 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 48 degrees and sunny. Paris is 51 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 54 and sunny. Bagram is 25 and clear. Kyiv is 39 degrees and cloudy. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 41 and cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 64 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and mostly cloudy with a flood warning. Chicago, Illinois is 45 degrees and sunny with a heavy frost and ice warning, and New York, New York is 41 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. But the world desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Germany's domestic intelligence agency has put its former head, who has become a hard-right politician since being removed from the job several years ago, under scrutiny. Oh, like I said, their own Mike Flynn. Hans-Georg Maassen, who posted a letter from the BFV agency to his lawyer on his website after public broadcaster, ARD, and the media outlet T-Online reported that the authority he led from 2012 to 2018 now has him in its files on right-wing extremism. The letter, dated January 16th, listed information that the BFV has him in its files. The agency refused to comment on the report and the letter, saying that it does not comment on individuals because of their rights. Maassen was removed as head of the BFV in 2018 after downplaying far-right violence against migrants in the eastern city of Chemnitz. He became a vocal, if marginal, figure on the hard right of the conservative Christian Democratic Union, the party once led by Angela Merkel, and ran unsuccessfully for election to the parliament in 2021. CDU leaders last year launched an effort to expel Maassen following a tweet in which he said that the direction of the driving forces in the political and media sphere was eliminatory racism against whites and the burning desire for Germany to kick the bucket. In recent weeks, Maassen has set in motion plans to turn an arch-conservative group he leads, the Werte Union, into a new political party. And on Saturday, he tweeted a letter announcing that he was leaving the CDU, currently Germany's main opposition party, which he asserted is now a variant of the socialist parties and not an alternative to them.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Nicole Winfield of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Hungarian government yesterday, Wednesday, defended its treatment of an Italian anti-fascist activist being held in a Hungarian jail after images of her chained and shackled at a Budapest court hearing sparked official protests by the Italian government. Police arrested Ilaria Salas in the Hungarian capital last year after she was suspected of involvement in assaults against participants in Hungary's Day of Honor commemoration. The event takes place on February 11th of each year, with far-right activists marking the failed attempt by Nazi and Allied Hungarian soldiers to break out of Budapest during the Red Army siege of the city in 1945. Hungarian government spokesman Zoltán Kovács blasted media coverage of the Salas case, which he said was an orchestrated leftist attack aimed at destroying good Hungary-Italy political relations. Hungary prosecutors have requested 11 years in prison if Salas is convicted. Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni spoke about her detention with Hungarian Prime Minister Orban yesterday, Wednesday. The Hungarian leader's press chief Bertalan Havasi told local news site Telex U for Hungary. Earlier in the week, the Italian Foreign Ministry summoned the Hungarian deputy ambassador to formally protest after Salas appeared in court with her wrists and ankles shackled and chains limiting her movement. In a statement, the ministry recalled European and international law, which calls for the need to respect the dignity of prisoners, including the way in which defendants are transferred to court and the guarantees of a fair trial. Specifically, the foreign ministry requested alternatives to pretrial detention, such as house arrest, and called for the indictment to be translated into Italian and for Salas's attorneys to have access to a video of the alleged incidents so she can mount a defense. And they're part of the EU. Let's not forget that. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.